Welcome back to the show that will focus on the genre of comedy or romance. Definitely some drama, some action, for some horror is going to be in there. How is this possible? Well, because we're hopping on the magic bus. It's going to transport us all back to high school.
Lucky.
The golden age of the high school flick began in earnest with the 1980s. That's the first decade that consistently churned out quality academic-related cinema that we still fondly revisit today. And for our competitive purposes, you better have a full roster of all-time greats because it's about deciding the decade of Dewey Decimal dominance that makes the honor roll. Apologies to the 1970s, and particularly the movie Grease. We had to leave that era off our list, much to the chagrin of our producer Alex, who still wears a T-Birds jacket to work even in the heat of summer, when we're supposed to be on vacation.
Well, that's cool, baby.
Other hearts were broken as well. You see, each decade we are considering, from the 1980s through the 2010s, could have a maximum of 6 movies as its representatives. That means we got the cream of the crop, but we also had to leave off some fan favorites like License to Drive, Pump Up the Volume, Freaky Friday, and Boyhood. And even I, Mark Ellis, who lettered in basketball, cross country, and baseball, suffered a fractured aorta as a result of cuts being made. Encino Man, which won Pauly Shore his first of many Oscars, will not be helping the 1990s today. But I promise, when we do college movies, Son-in-Law is going to be there. And when we do war movies, In the Army Now will enlist. And when we do biosphere film, okay, this is spiraling out of control. Here's how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer / Audience Score. Round 3, iconic characters. Round 4, memorable moments. And then we'll do a wild card round that I hope doesn't involve trigonometry. For the most part, sports-related movies will not be on the playing field today. We might do our own verses for that. So let's get hyped with some characters we will be hearing from. Jeff Spicoli, come on down. Stifler, put down the beer and whatever else is in that cup. Juno, grab your Academy Award. And Malcolm Jib Diggy, prepare to make some Bitcoin. Let's get it on.
So am I student A or student B? Am I a geek or a menace?
You see us as you want to see us. Sincerely yours, The Breakfast Club.
Round 1, box office. I'm not a whiz when it comes to demographics or which type of audience is attracted to what kind of entertainment. All I know about demos is that everyone who watches this show regularly has an IQ of at least 150, and when it comes to folks that want to go see high school movies in theaters, you have the junior high school kids hoping to glean some insight into how best conduct themselves in their formative years, and adults looking for some rose or rosé tinted glasses with which to fondly walk, run, or streak down memory lane.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
That's a pretty wide swath of human, and predictably every high school decade in today's competitive video essay boasts numerous hits that packed movie theaters with butts, popcorn, and probably snuck in Boone's Farm. To be fair, I guess I grade on a curve. We adjusted the following dollars and cents into modern day bucks. And thanks to that math, the 1980s show up strong. 2 of our representatives from that era grossed over $100 million in theaters, led by Ferris, Bueller, taking the day off to the tune of 173 big ones, surely enough cheddar to buy Cameron's dad a new ride. All told, our crop of 80s movies averaged just a Wolfman chest hair under the magic line, settling at $95.3 million per flick. Bringing up the rear, but holding the boombox high, is Say Anything, which still did a respectable $46 million.
Excellent. All right, this is great.
But then the 90s came roaring into the mainstream, and with them, 3 movies that banked over $100 million. Led by the raunchy comedy despised by pastry chefs everywhere, American Pie. That film, which I can do an entire TED Talk about how, without it, we don't get Schitt's Creek, grossed $184 million domestically. Not as gross but still profitable were Clueless and She's All That, both of whom surpassed $100 million. So it seems like the 1990s should be our clubhouse leader, right? As if Randall Pink Floyd and his buds in Dazed and Confused may have won our hearts on physical media and cable, but when Richard Linklater's Baby was unleashed upon the world in 1993, it only made $18 million in ticket sales. All right, just all right. McConaughey creeping around high schoolers drops the overall 1990s average down to $92.3 million, but the best was yet to come. When the keg of the 1990s was tapped out, in came a new millennium that would break records in the realm of high school film profitability. The 2000s are by far the most dominant decade at the movie theater, as their 5 films on our list averaged $131 million at the box office. The flick that didn't register at the multiplex more than made up for it on Disney Channel views because it's called High School Musical. All in this together with the singing basketball student athletes are box office smashes like Superbad, Bring It On, and Mean Girls. But the highest grossing film of any we'll discuss today is the Oscar-winning Juno. The 2007 groundbreaking film beat out American Pie by just a mil, grossing $185 million and making Diablo Cody a household name. Perhaps the biggest achievement of the 2000s was the lowest grosser we have, the $66 million raking in Napoleon Dynamite. $66 million for a quirky oddball indie with no major stars? That alone is worth the vote for Pedro.
Are you serious? I'm dead serious.
The 2010s saw a major dip in dollar bills ranked, but not the quality of the film. Critical darlings like Dope and Edge of 17 couldn't crack $20 million on minuscule marketing budgets. However, the one flick from this decade that did make over $100 million did so emphatically as 21 Jump Street giggled its way to the tune of a $158 million total haul. The 1980s proved high school flicks are here to stay, and the 90s showed us that every new generation is yearning for its own box office juggernaut, but the 2000s were by far the decade where the bank vaults got the busiest. Thanks to McLovin, Regina George, and a couple who didn't practice the safest of lovemaking techniques, the 2000s win round 1 and take an early lead.
If we're gonna be the best, we have to have the best. Missy's the poo, so take a big whiff.
Round 2, Tomatometer / Audience Score. We might as well call this round "And Then There Were Two," because the 1980s are providing stiff competition to the revenge-minded 2010s. Lackluster box office results be damned, the 2010s finally get to flex their muscle in the round that asks the eternal question of high school: does anyone like me? I want to first be fair to the 1990s and 2000s, however. It's not critics and audiences were completely dismissing those films. In fact, every decade represented today boasts a fresh average on both the Tomatometer and Audience Score metrics. The 90s are the slowest up the gym class rope in both categories, as their 64% Tomatometer average and 69% Audience Score indicate. The 2000s narrowly missed out on toppling the 1980s for second place on the Tomatometer, notching 77.3% to the 1980s' 78.3% average. The scoreboard isn't quite as close in terms of audience score, as the 2000s dipped down to 75.8%, looking up at the 1980s, and it's 81%. For funsies, the highest Tomatometer of any 1990s movie was the deserving Clueless at 82%.
As if.
Meanwhile, Juno once again helps out the 2000s with the high mark of 94%. Shockingly, both those titles still fall short of the best from the 1980s, which is... Remember that Boombox movie? How it didn't dominate the box office? Well, apparently critics love Peter Gabriel because Say Anything is at 98%. Congrats to Lloyd and Diane. But as far as Scotty and Boof go, it pains my inner child to say Teen Wolf is rotten.
These waves are mine.
And it weighs down the otherwise super fresh decade of the 80s. The next lowest is Fast Times at Ridgemont High, standing tall at 76%. Maybe if director Amy Heckerling could have talked Van Halen into actually doing the theme song for the movie like she wanted, it would have been even taller in the Tomatometer patch. But we still have Cameron Crowe. Hey, he wrote Fast Times, whose Say Anything remains unsurpassed at 98%. Uh-oh. Wait, no, it can't be. Good God, that's Lady Bird's music! The 2017 awards contender is 99% on the Tomatometer, and the rest of that decade helps get us all into an Ivy League school. 3 of our 5 selections from the 2010s boast a Tomatometer of 90% or above. The lowest rated film is 21 Jump Street at a solid B average of 84%. All told, this decade more than makes up for the lackluster box office with a 91.6% Tomatometer average, lapping the field by over 13 percentage points. It also ekes out a close victory in terms of audience score as it topples the 1980s 81.6% to 81% flat. Damn it, Teen Wolf! The 80s could have had this one! Is it too late to swap in Back to the Future for Teen... I'm being told we can, but we can only use the Eric Stoltz footage? What kind of a deal is... Okay, look, all apologies to Alex P. and the Keaton family, but the 2010s have held off the 1980s and get on the board. It's 1-1 to nothing to nothing.
Are you even up there?
Round 3, iconic characters. The 1980s have come so tantalizingly close to winning a round in today's Knowledge Bowl. Could they finally score a point in the iconic characters round? It's quite possible, as no amount of rotten is going to hold back Styles G. White and his overstuffed locker here, but the 1990s are also looking to get on the scoreboard, and they have Paul Rudd kind of sort of making out with his... Is she his cousin? I never fully grasped what was going on. We'll get there.
Jeez, I'm bugging myself.
Fresh off its round 2 victory, the 2010s are riding high into the round that begs for character development, likely steering in the direction of romance. To All the Boys I've Loved Before is up for a challenge, as Lara Jean and Peter make for arguably the best couple in the entire decade.
Hi.
But Malcolm, Jib, and especially Kiersey Clemens Diggy are also irresistible as individuals, and who doesn't want Easy A's Rosemary and Dill to be their parents for a week? It is high school, so we should probably be on the lookout for cool teachers in the iconic characters round. Aha! Gotcha! Woody Harrelson as Mr. Bruner strikes the perfect notes in Edge of 17. His biting wit mixed with genuine compassion for his students proves why Joan Cusack got so excited hearing that kind of same titled Stevie Nicks song in The School of Rock, which is not about high school kids, so we're safe. Whew. That Richard Linklater film did release in the 2000s, however, and that Kids is what we call a smooth transition. Look, I'd love to gush about popular couples like Juno and Paulie, idiotic teens like Seth Evan and their sexy hamburger friend, or notable standouts like Napoleon. But if it's iconic characters you want, only one couple helped launch a multi-film franchise that now includes a meta streaming show, High School Musical. I'll be honest, I've never seen any of these movies, and I didn't feel compelled to do so for my prep in this episode.
This means something in the world of theater.
So I'm just going to say that Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens are incredibly talented, insanely likable, and I still want Efron in a game of one-on-one. To borrow the title of another film from this decade, you, me, on a playground, game is to ones and twos, 2-11, may the best man win, and the second best dancer win. All right, said my piece.
It's nice.
I hope the Mean Girls crew didn't hear me slight them, because you do not want to get on the wrong side of Regina George. Not only do Rachel McAdams and Lindsay Lohan lead a dynamite high school ensemble cast, Mean Young Ladies also features Miss Norbury in a memorable performance by Tina Fey. We all saw our teachers out of school a few times at a grocery store or a mall or a blacksmith shop. I grew up in Colonial Williamsburg. It's just as awkward as it is in this note-perfect depiction here. But also shout out to Mac and Brendan McGuffin Juno. Faced with an incredibly challenging family dilemma, they still found ways to give us heartfelt chuckles thanks to indelible turns from J.K. Simmons and Allison Janney.
And I'm going to punch that Bleecker kid in the wiener next time I see him.
Mac.
But now we turn the clock back a bit more to the 1990s. If it's dumbfounded parents you want, witness American Pie. I could remind you again of how great Eugene Levy is in this series of movies, but I'll simply say, we'll just tell your mother you ate it all. Stifler's mom gives us all another memory for the books, as does overbearing father Larry Miller in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Whoops!
We can't take our eyes off of Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger's chemistry either, but if we had to give this entire round to one iconic character, it just might be Cher. Alicia Silverstone was known for flipping us off in music videos from Aerosmith when Clueless came out. Ever since, her character's namesake has become almost as iconic as, that other Cher.
No way.
Amy Heckerling got together quite the ensemble cast for her seminal 1990s movie, but that wasn't the first time she pulled off such a feat. In fact, this whole round could come down to which gaggle of Heckerling Utes is more memorable. The questionable student drivers in Clueless, or the cross-section of high school pupils in 1982's Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Jess Piccoli might be the first name you think of when it comes to Fast Times. I mean, the list of students who successfully had a pizza delivered to their desk is very short. Jess Piccoli, Zach Morris, that's it. That's the list. But let us not shortchange Jennifer Jason Leigh's Stacy or Judge Reinhold's Brad. I'm pretty sure no one will ever shortchange anything to do with Phoebe Cates' Linda, and when you hear that Cars tune, does anyone think of anything else? Like, including the surviving band members. Do they think of anything else? Rick Ocasek, forever. Mr. Hand is a singular teaching presence in that film, but if it's authority you want to mellencamp against, look no further than the arch nemesis of the Breakfast Club, Mr. Vernon. He was so hell-bent on disciplining these teens that his reign of terror somehow united the very different backgrounds of the club into one lovable, iconic, fist-pumping force. Another John Hughes-Molly Ringwald collab gave us her Samantha in 16 Candles. But if we just needed one more all-time great to give the 1980s the win in this round over the likes of Mike Dexter, Torrance Shipman, and Lady Bird herself, we turn to the cold and clammy hands of Ferris Bueller. Life does move fast, but not so quick that we'd forget the harmonious trio of Matthew Broderick, Mia Sara, and Alan Ruck. We also should shout out Ed Rooney and his well-meaning secretary while we're here. Wow, the 1980s won, and I didn't even have to do my deep dive into what would have happened if Teen Wolf played Division I college ball. Or why Mick was 40 years old but still in high school. Ferris has saved the 1980s, and that decade gets its first victory today. Chicka. Well, shake it up, baby, now. Shake it up, baby. Twist and shout. Round 4, memorable moments. Oh yeah, it's time to take all of those fancy characters we just gushed about and put them into action. In the classroom and hallways, sure, but also on the streets, maybe on the sports field, and definitely in the bedroom. Or in Jim's case, the kitchen island. This round is all about the moments that elevated these films from run-of-the-mill coming-of-age flicks and transformed them into the enduring legacy of what it means to be a kid in high school. Or in the case of the 2000s, a cheerleader. If you've ever been a cheerleader, I haven't, or wore a cheer uniform to class once, I have.
That's right.
You can probably guess the lion's share of memorable moments in the 2000s decade are thanks to cheer, spirit, and dance routines. I tossed dance in there to make sure we could include the awkward Napoleon dance sequence in here. It might be my favorite part of Napoleon Dynamite. Bring It On succeeds in making us all run the emotional gamut alongside our protagonists in the world of competitive cheer, and it's that denouement, oh Mickey, that had folks going cray-cray in the aisles as the lights went back up. High School Musical obviously has any number of amazingly choreographed, numbers, and for viewers of a certain age, they still haven't forgotten the lasting impact they've had. But this decade's top moments for me come from Superbad and Mean Girls.
That is so fetch.
Who hasn't felt the nerve-wracking rush of buying a fake ID, or of Katie's attempt to fit in by learning the lingo like fetch? I'm still not sure if butter is in fact a carb, but I do know that if cops ever allowed me to go nuts in a police car, my song of choice would also be Panama. It's a great driving tune, legal or otherwise. Music would similarly play a huge role in the best moments of the 2010s, from the Lady Bird Crash Into Me usage to the band REO in Dope. And yes, we can even count Jonah Hill's Slim Shady moment in 21 Jump Street. Does it matter here that they're just pretending to be in high school? I guess in the movie they do act like 9th graders the whole time anyway, so we can allow it.
Fuck you, science!
And while Dope features a treasure trove of iconic moments and places, shout out Randy's Donuts, such as Student A or Student B or Jacoby getting blackmailed, or just anything with William the drug dealer in it, many of the greatest hits from the 2010s owe a huge thank you to the 1980s. To All the Boys I've Loved Before features a perfect reference to 16 Candles, and Easy A name drops numerous 1980s staples, and Woodchuck takes it a step further to recreate the Say Anything moment. So why do we keep looking back to a bygone decade even as our whole future, particularly college, is right in front of us? Well, there's a ton of great memories from those movies. Often imitated, never duplicated, is Lloyd in the famous boombox scene. I don't mean just paid homage in subsequent films. I'm talking real life. How many neighbors have had some idiot boyfriend pull up to his ex's house in hopes he can win her back if the right song is loud enough? It's a great moment for moviegoers, possibly the most despised scene in homeowner association history. Whether or not your place has a pool, it's always a good idea to periodically check to see if Judge Reinhold is lurking around it. While I try to remain as classy and as family-friendly as I can, look, who are we kidding? The Phoebe Cates pool sequence is an all-timer, as is Spicoli's surfer dream, or really any interaction between him and Mr. Hand.
Danger is my business.
I personally love the sports angles of Jefferson beating up on Lincoln in Fast Times, Scotty Howard turning into Teen Wolf in the most intense scrum in basketball history, and Ferris catching a foul ball at a Cubs game on his day off. Bueller plays out as one long great moment, from his opening monologue teaching a generation of kids how to fake being sick, up until the very end where he, and then later Deadpool, encourage everyone to hit the road. Choosing just one moment from that movie is nearly impossible, so I'll just take the one with the most people. The parade! Dankeschön to Twist and Shout, it's perfect, and if you look closely in the background, you can see the late, great John Schnepp partying with all those other Chicagoans. Oh yeah, Cameron kicking the car is pretty great too. The detention dance in The Breakfast Club or the heartfelt final cake scene in 16 Candles, John Hughes gave us moments so lasting, we feel like we were those teens in those movies, and those are in fact a living history of what happened to us. I'm leaning towards giving this round to the 1980s as well, unless the 1990s can somehow manufacture an historic comeback for the ages. Reaching home plate with a pie is a good start, but when I think of American Pie, it's still that opening sequence where Jim is doing his best to see through the squiggly lines of blocked out adult cable channels when his parents enter the room. It's perhaps the best tone setter for what was to follow in high school movie history. She's All That competes well for the best musical moment from this decade with its usage of Fatboy Slim, but 10 Things I Hate About You and Can't Hardly Wait make strong pushes with Can't Take My Eyes Off You and Paradise City respectively. Who would have thunk those two tunes would be uttered in the same sentence, ever? I love you, baby! Similarly to Mr. Bueller, Clueless plays out like a gigantic, memorable moment, from the matchmaking of teachers to the audience learning as if, and especially the driving scene. Getting on a freeway in Los Angeles is terrifying as an adult. Try being a kid and taking that wrong turn. But it's Dazed and Confused that features the most scenes that are instantly recognizable and impactful. The intensity of being a young cheerleader, the pressure of being a football star, and the even more intense pressure of being a pitcher on the mound knowing you're going to get paddled as soon as the game ends. Music gives us a sense of mood throughout, from the legendary Alice Cooper screaming the end of the school year to Skinner's Tuesday's Gone, signaling the keg running out, to Foghat's Slow Ride reminding us the summer has just begun. Can anyone hear the opening bass riff of Sweet Emotion now and not think of cars strutting around in the high school parking lot? And if this was strictly a round based on musical selection, the 1990s might have the edge, but once again, the 1980s have proven too iconic to spot any other decade this round. It certainly has a huge advantage because it is the oldest, and while most of our lead characters in high school films may not respect their elders, they all paid tribute to the coming-of-age tales that came before them. John Hughes gave every decade to follow a blueprint for how to make a high school movie last, and Amy Heckerling kept her own roadmap for multiple decades. But it all started in the 1980s. Plus, the constant struggle of styles to buy booze in Teen Wolf predates Superbad by a full 20 years.
I don't even like beer.
Never say die.
Surfing on a van counts as an iconic moment, and I guess it's one of the many reasons the 80s are going to get another point this round, but kids, please, do not surf on the top of moving vans at home. I'd rather you feel too fondly about a dessert than risk dying because a 35-year-old werewolf basketball movie told you to do something. The 1980s go up 2-1 to 1-0, and the 1990s are the only round left to not be on the board yet. More so than the struggle of getting out, of winning, of discovering who we truly are, we love high school movies because they make us feel young again. And the best part is, we can watch them with a beer and not worry about our parents catching us. But if the lights flash twice, that means someone called the cops and everyone scatter. I don't care who you are, how old you are, you could be 17 or 70. The lights flash twice, you run like hell out the bathroom window. Thanks for stumbling down memory lane with me, and congrats to the 1980s for winning the coveted title of Best High School Movie Decade. The 2010s are too concerned with real-world issues to care, and the 1990s just want this vid to end. But the 2000s? Look out, Molly Ringwald. They lost because of you, and they ain't happy about it. I'm Mark Ellis, and you can catch me on social media and let me know your take on the best high school movie decade of all time. I'm on Twitter, or Facebook, or Instagram, or driving around the high school parking lot blasting Jamiroquai, still wearing my high school varsity jacket. All right.